both got to my best life, yeah. We both got to my best life, yeah. We both got to my best life.
Individuals who sign have a language. It's not just like a manual form of whatever spoken language that happens to be in your area. It has its own syntax, has its own structure, has its own idioms. And if you look at that from that perspective, if the world itself was inclusive and accessible to everyone, we would still have a language.
There's a bunch of common misconceptions about sign language. It is not just what's on this. It is the face, it is the position, it is how you move your body in time and space. Deafness varies from hard of hearing to people who are deaf and use sign language as their first language. I think it's important for us to be inclusive of the entirety of that spectrum.
And that's what led us down the path to the new sign language feature. Forza Horizon 5 is an open world game set in the beautiful, diverse country of Mexico. One of the core pillars of Forza Horizon is freedom, and the way that manifests itself in the game is that we, as much as possible, try to give players the choice about what it is they do next. There are so many decision points within Horizon that everybody's journey through the game is pretty much unique to them. And a lot of the game's story and a lot of the game's tutorial, where we're giving players instructions about what they need to do, is delivered in cinematic cutscenes. And so that was where we wanted to focus our effort when we were delivering the BSL and ASL support.
I think it is so incredible that Forza Horizon 5 is embedding not just one sign, but two. And I think there's a common misconception with American Sign Language and British Sign Language. Well, they're the same, right? No, they couldn't be more different.
We brought in some people from that community into the studio to come and talk to us and share their experiences, and that was one of the most inspirational days of work I've ever had.
I was streaming, and then there was this person in chat who was like, "Hey, I'm from Microsoft and I want to reach out to you." And that followed up with an invitation to come here to Playground Games for the accessibility sprint as a subject matter expert, as someone who's hard of hearing. And it was very revealing for me as a gamer to sort of think about, well, if I had a magic wand, like, if money was no object, what would I do? And, I'd be like, well, sign language, it's, put it in, because English is a second language or a third language, so, do that.
These are some of the core fundamentals when we think about accessibility. You've got to embed inclusive design from the start. You've got to embed people with disabilities into the process. You've got to really listen to what people need in order to game.
You really have to go into it just open-minded and assume you know nothing, have complete humility, and go into it and ask questions, let people share their stories and share their experiences, because when they do that, we can all learn and we can get better and we can be inspired to have new ideas for how we can deliver better features and better content for those players.
Coming in again to play the game and to see the feature in action, despite being terrible at driving, was great, because there were even considerations that I hadn't thought about, like the background. I'd assumed the interpreters would have just a plain white background, but I had the option to change the color and to move that interpreter around the frame. That was really just cool and exciting, and then seeing the interpreter come up was just magical, because it was this new moment that hadn't really ever existed before, and in some small way I got to kind of be a part of that and a catalyst in it.
But I did want to show you one of the cutscenes that with the ASL support turned on.
Hey Ale, how can I help?
Jump in the buggy. I'll tell you the story on the way.
Let me just get the door.
Is that key? It's really here. We found it for you, Papa Fernando.
But look at it. I've never seen a beetle like that.
Being like the first type of integration with signed performers in the game, there's definitely an opportunity here where we can show what we've learned as a company, and we really need to provide that information and the tool to the different studios that are interested in doing this and say, you know, this is what we learned, and this is what worked, and this is what didn't work. There you go. Make it better.
I think when you approach accessibility, it's easy to think that the options that you're adding and the settings that you're adding are only serving a small number of players, and maybe that that resource could be better spent on features that benefit a perceived large number of players. But I don't think that's necessarily true. Every little thing that we can do as developers to make their enjoyment easier, to make their access to games easier, is just bringing more and more gamers into this hobby that we all love. And so I hope that when other developers see that we've done this and learn from us, and I think we're happy to talk to anybody to share those learnings, I hope that more and more developers will start to introduce features like this as well.
I think play is a fundamental right. And if you take that as given, then it's important, if not even more important in these times, that everyone can play, including the 400 million gamers with disabilities around the world. So my hope is that this inspires the rest of the gaming industry in the same way as you've inspired us to really lead the future, to raise that ceiling, raise that bar of what's possible, and that we become more inclusive, thoughtful, respectful, empowering to gamers with disabilities out there.